All right. Three, two, one. Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about a loss to Villarreal 3-2. Despite Real Madrid having the lead twice in this match, Villarreal managed to turn it around. It was an up and down game. I felt like it kind of came in waves. There were moments where you thought Madrid looked good, and then moments where it really, really looked poor. And so joining me tonight to kind of break this all down is Sid. Sid, how are you doing?
Great. It was such a Real Madrid game to lose right after the 4-0 Clasico win
Yeah,
domestic. It's almost like it's straight out of the book of Real Madrid, it feels like.
for sure.
Um,
For sure.
yeah, I mean, I thought I did like the lineup, I guess I should say. I liked how he just changed up the lineup, considering I still think the league is somewhat over, even though like if they won today and kept winning out, sure, but now I think the league is definitely over. And I like the rotation. If there's one good thing to take away from the game for sure, just giving Chuameni some minutes in midfield, Ceballos minutes in midfield, Vasquez at right back, things like that.
What'd you make of the 4-2-3-1 formation? Because now this is pretty much the second league game where we've rolled this out, Valladolid being the first. And Asensio playing that number 10 spot, Rodrigo on the right wing. They didn't really interchange as much this game as they did against Valladolid, but what was your take on that formation and whether or not it helped us or not in this match?
I think it's very I think it's sort of like what you said, how there were moments where it looked like, wow, like great rotation, great the 4-2-3-1's working. It's like sort of like how you drew it up on the training ground. And then there were moments where the reality of the situation became apparent that they haven't really played together in this formation that much. Defensively, especially, there are just moments where nobody knows who they're supposed to mark. I thought the defense was frustrating and the offense was promising. I think overall, if I had to I think that's where I would lean. I think it's a gamble that leans towards offense, and we saw how that worked out today. The team couldn't hold the lead, but they did take the lead twice.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you saw the moments where Asensio thrived, and it's because he had the ability to hang a little bit higher. He was freed of some of the defensive responsibilities a normal central midfielder would have. And so that allowed him to kind of take advantage of transition opportunities, run at a retreating back line, and then pick his pass. And that's kind of where that first goal came from. And I think to your point, there's give and take with that. I mean, the positives are you have an additional runner in the offense. You have basically four offensive threats that you're keeping a little bit higher and just relying on the double pivot of, in this case, Ceballos and Chuameni to help that back line. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, I think you also saw how being one less in midfield made it a little bit more disjointed. And I think Chuameni and Ceballos sometimes were chasing shadows. I think they were a little bit late to runners. I think you saw that in some of the goals, even just in terms of pressing and tracking runners. And so I think some of I think it goes back to my point about the game ebbing and flowing. There were moments where it looked like, yes, this is going to work. We're going to make the best of it. It pays off to play with these four attackers. And there were moments where you're like, oh my God, this is so disjointed. This midfield doesn't work. Like over the course of 90 minutes, is that a realistic formation or a system that Madrid can use? Or is it something where if you don't bury those goals in the first half, then you might have to adjust your system, or it's just something you use in the second half where you're chasing a game?
Yeah, it's hard to say. And Villarreal are one of the better teams in the league. I think that's
Yeah, it's been difficult playing against them this year. I mean, the Copa del Rey, we had to come back. We lost to them at in the reverse fixture. They've been a tough one for us.
yeah. So I think it's like almost a harsh game to evaluate the formation in that sense.
Yeah.
They are one of the better teams, and as much as I'd love for both times the team took the lead, I thought it would work, but it almost felt off that we could rotate just the way our team generally sets up. It almost felt like not real. Like I didn't think we would win that easily, and that manifested by the end. It's almost funny though how the same way in the Clasico the team showed up, the way on a Champions League night, if it's close, they're gonna win. A night like this, you just know the ball's gonna bounce the other way. It's just it's the history of Real Madrid.
Well, it helps that Villarreal had prime Arjen Robben on their team, i.e. Chukwueze, playing out of his mind. I've never seen him play that well. He's always been a guy that's like you felt like has never fulfilled his potential, never been able to put all the pieces together. Of course, tonight at the Santiago Bernabeu, he puts the pieces together. Everything he touched turned to gold. I mean, Nacho will be having nightmares about Chukwueze tonight. I thought he had a couple good tackles on him, but for the most part, Chukwueze got the better of him, and you knew exactly what he was going to do, just like Arjen Robben. You knew exactly what he was going to do, but you couldn't stop him. And that final goal was just the dagger blow.
Yeah, it was something else. And yeah, I mean, that's why I keep going back to rotation being a good general feeling in this game, like the midfield getting Tchouaméni some minutes. I thought that was really important. Obviously, we still played Benzema, Vinicius, Rodrigo, but I think like at this point, La Liga games, the rest of them are more of a training exercise for the Champions League than like, isn't that how we have to view them at this point?
Yeah, I guess, but at the same time, you've got Atleti who are playing out of their minds in 2023. I mean, this is the best they've been under Simeone in a long time. And I mean, there's some pride at stake. It just making sure you maintain that second spot. They'll be within 2 points of us if they win tomorrow. I mean, I'm so if you what let's say we win the Copa del Rey. You let's say Atleti catch up to us in third place, and we move into third place, and then you get to the Champions League semifinals but are knocked out. Is that considered a successful season, or is that considered a season you're willing to take?
No, no. But my point is like the league is now officially over. I mean, if it wasn't already. And like I think there was a small chance, just 12 points, and
Oh, I don't know if there's a chance. I don't know that I believe there is a chance, but I still fully expect Madrid to win these games.
yeah, I mean, I just thought before this game, mathematically, you were a couple like with Barcelona's injuries, you were a couple drop point games away from maybe, feel like building momentum through good performances in the league. But with this, I feel like now the league is like almost pointless. I don't know how it's going to be interesting to see. You do have to keep second place. Um, it's not too dissimilar to last year where we were probably going to win anyways around this time, but playing better kind of helped keep the team in rhythm as they went into the Champions League ties. I think I'm mostly just paying attention to the rotation for that reason because it's about like are we now the lineup we put out Wednesday. I'm sure we're going to change the midfielders pretty aggressively and going forward. Like I hate to say it, but we need to win those league games enough to stay ahead of Atleti. But that's not too many points, honestly. Even if I mean, I don't think Atleti are going to win out or anything. They're not like they're good. They're in good form. I don't know if I'm not that concerned, I should say, about finishing third. This is one of the hardest games left on our schedule, for example. No more games against Atletico, no more games against Barcelona, no more games against Villarreal. The three teams that probably you would consider Real Madrid are expected to drop points against.
Because you mentioned the confidence factor there and just kind of the rhythm of playing well. Does that do we think that influences things come Wednesday or moving forward in the Champions League if we continue to kind of just bring it down, as Ancelotti said, cool the temperature when it comes to La Liga? Like, does that play on the minds? Is that like, I mean, Benzema, for example, he was running so hot, and then tonight it's kind of a game similar to what we've seen earlier in the season. Does that impact him for Wednesday?
Well, I don't think it impacts him for Wednesday because I think the coaching staff will learn from every game. And I don't think what we saw tonight is quite close or at all. And I don't like Asensio is not going to start on a Champions League night anytime this season, for example. As much as I love him when he's, has runners on both sides and Benzema ahead of him in league games, he's not starting any of those games. So as a result, I don't want to take too much away from this game for that one reason alone. Like the whole demeanor of the team on the Champions League night is different. Like going back to like 2017-18 when they weren't too good in the league and they still won it. I almost get a bit of 2017-18 vibes this season. Maybe not good enough to win the league, maybe not even good enough to put out consistent performances, but the talent is there. Like as a pure knockout team, would you not say that the rest of the team outside Benzema is like in a better position than last season?
In terms of form,
Yeah, like Rodrigo is more established as a starter. Eduardo Camavinga is now established. Like the team can rely on him. I think really Rodrigo and Camavinga
I
being featured more gives me certain confidence.
I think though there's a couple things that are major differences from this season versus last season, and that triangle of Alaba, Mendy, and Casemiro. I think you can't discount how important they were. And I think obviously Alaba's coming back now, and it looks like he's back to his best and back into rhythm, which is huge. But for long stretches of the season, we were without Alaba, we've been without Mendy, and obviously Casemiro's gone. And so I think those three cornerstones, not necessarily like they provide. You could argue they provide very little offensively, but I think it's the defensive stability that they provide, which releases and gives freedom to others. And so I don't think we have that. I don't know that we have that same solidity without those type of guys there. And I'm not saying that this is maybe I don't know if I would say it's a worse team, but I'm playing devil's advocate because I think those three guys really do make a difference. I think it hasn't really been talked about this season because how well Camavinga's been playing, wherever he's been put, and Tchouaméni at the start of the season. But I think Casemiro in those big games will be a miss, and I think you do start to notice like some of the tactical holes in our midfield when he isn't there. And so I think those are major differences from this year versus last year. And I agree with you that like Camavinga probably been one of our best players this season, playing lights out, Rodrigo more established, but I don't know if that's enough.
Yeah, and it comes down to the lineup. And I mean, we saw last year around this time that Carlo learned progressively during the games. Like Casemiro missed the game at the Etihad, but by the time he was back against City, the defense was so much more shored up, even outside his mere presence. I feel like tactically they figured out how to defend better. It's mostly I agree the personnel are different. They haven't found an 11 like the one that was able to start games last season. I guess the one that started games last season didn't play too well in a lot of the Champions League games. That's where I'm confident that Camavinga from the get-go means we may not have to come back as much. But I agree that the lack of Casemiro and Mendy for sure means the defense is less reliable. And that's where I just wonder, like, I feel like the tool set, yes, Casemiro's gone, but with Camavinga established and Rodrigo more established, I feel more comfortable knowing that we'll start games without being at a physical deficit. Mainly the position we were in against City, where we were leaking so many chances in the first leg and had to claw our way all the way back, and the position we were in against Chelsea in the second leg, where we just gave up a 3-goal deficit. I'm wondering what the advantage of avoiding those situations entirely will be in the Champions League. And I hope that games like this, he realizes what constitutes stability and what doesn't. And I also think there's just more trust in guys like Ceballos and Valverde to play in midfield. I'm hoping that's what Rodrigo's presence on the wing can do. And again, those are things that are so unrelated to what we saw tonight, because we saw Asensio playing as the fourth attacker. It's just so night and day from what we're going to see probably on this coming week,
Yeah, and then again for me, like I don't know if that's the right. Maybe it has nothing to do with it. And once that Champions League anthem music goes, like, and Santiago Bernabeu is tuned in, it's a whole different mindset, like you talked about. But at the same time, part of me is torn, thinking, like, why change everything up? Why kind of break the rhythm of this team and the momentum today ahead of the Champions League? And maybe again, like if the ball bounces differently, you look at the XG from this game. I think it was like 2.1 versus 1.1 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so Real Madrid, if the ball bounces differently, they could have had this one, and I could be singing a different story. So I don't want to get too results oriented, and I want to focus more on the process. But I think it'll be interesting come Wednesday, because I don't know if guys like Chouameni, um, Nacho, Rudiger, I don't know that those guys, even Rodrigo tonight, I think he'll start on Wednesday, but I don't know that those guys did themselves any favors in trying to make their way into the lineup. What do you think? I mean, given today's performance, and what do you think going into
Yeah,
Wednesday will look like?
Rodrigo wasn't the most clinical today for sure. I agree. I don't. It's so hard because at this point, every time we don't start him, I feel like we pay for it.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I mean, you know how my view, I think most of the listeners know, I'm 100% in on Rodrigo. I think he should be, without a doubt, part of the Once de Gala and starting those big games.
yeah. I would. I don't think Chouameni will play. I think that's why he played tonight, and I think that's fine. I think there's being too much read into him. Like, look at this midfield; it's stacked. Like, just give him. It's his first season at the club.
Yeah.
Eduardo Camavinga is literally like even before he joined, his metrics were always more crazy than Chouameni's. Just as far as he was more of a unicorn. Chouameni was just a guy getting minutes as a six, and he was more known. His archetype was better understood. But Camavinga's always been more of a unicorn, and I don't think it's a big deal. Kroos and Modric are not going to be here forever, even if they manage to outlast any expectation. And so I don't expect Chouameni to start on Wednesday. And so I expect Camavinga to start. I agree that Militao was rested. I'm sure he's going to go with Militao and Alaba.
Yeah.
What do you think of playing Militao at right back potentially, or not for it?
I'm not no. His best position, center back. I mean, we saw it with Brazil in the World Cup. I thought he was fine, but nothing spectacular. Um, I'd rather, honestly, I'd take Carvajal or Nacho um over Militao at right back.
For sure, for sure. I think yeah, I think the only main concern is Carvajal for me on Wednesday. I don't know if Cruz and Modric start. It might be both. I guess Wednesday, what it comes down to is it's not too dissimilar to Liverpool at Anfield, where I do think the opposition might make it a little easy for us. I think the opposition are at a very flawed moment, Chelsea, where like I'm not saying this same lineup would do way better against Chelsea, but maybe honestly, because I think Chelsea are a team in disarray. Are they even better than Villarreal right now?
And honestly, I don't want to jinx it, but at the end of the day, this Chelsea team they're not a good team. Liverpool was not a good team either. And so Real Madrid should win that tie, but we know the Champions League. We know that upsets happen all the time, and crazy chaotic things happen, and things you would never fathom, which we even pulled off last season. So I'm not going to discount anything, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, they're just not a good team. I would say yes, Villarreal are a better team, and just
Right.
maybe they don't have better talent, better players, but just in terms of how well coached they are, they're a cohesive unit, and they know what they're trying. Like, they have an identity on the field, and these players actually know each other and have played with each other for more than 2 months. So I think from that perspective, yeah.
Yeah, they are definitely better coached. And there are a lot of things Lampard is going to do as caretaker. I don't think making them a challenging tactical outfit is one of them whatsoever. And it's from that standpoint that no matter what happened tonight, I think the process was good. I think that's why I'm more upbeat overall, since the process was good. And Chelsea are very much like Liverpool, not only being easy, but almost being the type of team that you can afford to learn from. If you get your first setup wrong for 30 minutes, it's probably not the end of the world against Chelsea. Whereas City, Bayern, or Napoli might be a completely different story. So, unlike last year, I think that run is a little bit easier going forward. Like, this Chelsea team is easier than last season's Chelsea team. I think that's something we could probably agree on. Yeah, like, when even if Chelsea get it wrong in the first leg, I don't think they're going to come back with like a perfect tactical setup that sees them go up 3-0 within an hour in the second leg. It's Lampard. And I say this as someone who thinks Lampard will do a good job. I think it was a very welcome change for them. I think Graham Potter, they might have looked really listless with him on a European night. So yeah, I don't want to jinx it. I mean, I don't really care as far as jinxing things. I feel like things just happen anyways. But it's yeah, I think if there's like a loss that you don't have to feel that bad about, it would be tonight for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we focus because maybe me in particular, I've been focusing on some of the negative, but how about some of the maybe even just player personnel performances tonight and some of the positives that you come away with? Who stood out for you?
I did like Ceballos. There were moments where the defense again wasn't great, but I think every game I see Ceballos, I like him. Like I want
Yeah,
him to
I
stay.
agree.
I wanted them to renew him. I think he has a future at this club. So if there's one player, honestly, that really like continues to solidify his presence, it's Ceballos. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I love Ceballos, and I think despite I think some of the mishaps he had tonight, if were more down to the system than him, and I think he actually, as an individual, really played well. You saw him play some of those kind of his Taylor characteristic pass where he breaks like two lines and plays the ball through the center back and the fullback to an on-running Vinicius. He wiggled his way out of like three players a couple times, and I just think he 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 did enough tonight to like deserve a good rating. I thought probably our best player was Vinicius. I thought just this was the best he's played against Juan Foyth. Juan Foyth usually does a pretty good job against him, but tonight he struggled. He really struggled, and I was just amazed at how long it took the ref to finally give him that yellow card. Nine Vinicius suffered 9 fouls. I think 8 of them were Juan Foyth, and he didn't get the card until his 7th or 8th. And so that was for me ridiculous. And you could see how frustrated Vinny was, and he kept going to the ref counting like 1, 2, 3, 4. How many does he get? And so I I felt for Vinicius on this one. Usually I don't like him complaining to the referee, but tonight I was kind of with him. I was like, this is getting out of hand. Just give the guy a card and he'll stop fouling him. But he just turned him inside out constantly tonight. Obviously got the goal. Maybe could have had a couple others if he had his finishing shoes on. And that's where again we go back to some of the bigger misses. You mentioned Rodrigo, Vinicius had a couple, Asensio had one, and so this could have been different. We hedged on the side of creating chances and keeping 4 men forward, and ultimately it didn't work out. And Chukwueze had the night of his life, so you could whittle it down to that. But for me, Vinicius, Ceballos. Let me look at the lineup again. I thought Asensio, like I mentioned, was really good as well. Obviously, if you nitpick with him, it again comes down to just the system used and maybe some of the personnel in midfield alongside him. Maybe you don't, despite Ceballos playing well and despite Tchouaméni playing fine. I didn't think he was spectacular, but I didn't think he was poor. Maybe they're just not the right personnel fits alongside him in midfield. And so those guys were probably the best for me. The rest of the team, honestly, I just not much there. Lucas Vasquez felt like we got nothing out of him. He doesn't even one thing I noticed in the last few games, and maybe this is just rust uh from coming off injury, but he's not even able to outrun folks anymore. Like the ball gets played through to him down the wing, and if he's in a foot race with one of the defenders, he can't outrun him anymore. And that's a little bit concerning. I felt like we got nothing from him. Nacho mentioned rough day. Our center backs were fine, nothing spectacular. And then Benzema and Rodrigo just really, really quiet.
Yeah, I agree. Vinicius now up to 21 goals, 16 assists for the season, I think. Some, if I'm not wrong, pretty good season from him. And we still got a good 10 games left for him to pad up those numbers. And
Well, I saw just on that point, I saw a stat the other day. which kind of blew my mind. So it was a stat comparing the best wingers of the last decade or two, and it had like Ribery, Robben, um, who else was on there? Uh, I'm forgetting a bunch of them, but like some of the best wingers in the game over the past 10 years. Hazard was on there, and how many of them have scored over 20 goals in a season and done that more than once. And none of them had done it more than 2 seasons. And Vinicius has already done it 2 seasons in a row at 22 years old. And so I think that's a testament to just how good this guy is. And even like some people earlier this year were saying that Vinicius is having a quieter year versus last year, but he's really not. He's really not. And the scouting report's been out on him, and you still can't stop him, no matter how many triple teams and how many fouls he gets this season and how frustrated he gets with the ref and the opposition fans. You still can't stop him. And I think just to see these numbers, it's crazy. And he's last year we were blown away with the breakout season, and what he's done now is just build on that and build consistency, which is what's required to be a superstar and to be at the top of the game. And I think his ability to produce game in and game out and to produce these type of numbers from the left wing is just a testament to how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly it's a better season if we really break it down in that scouting reports out. And the forward line has been more like it hasn't been as reliable. It's not been the same.
Benzema hasn't been there throughout the season.
Yeah, so I think last season Benzema, you could argue, was the best player, even though Vinicius was the spark that unlocked the new offense. Benzema was the best player. I think this season Vinicius is the best player, and the scouting reports out. He's been doubled and tripled more. They've been leaving the left back open more, and he's still pretty much on track to have the same output. And he's been fully available, which isn't really a feature of all the top forwards anymore. Like a lot of players, like the best forwards are the ones who are always available, and he is now. And I agree. It's pretty crazy. Like it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy place to be. And that's why I hope they put it together and actually do justice to the season and win one of the major trophies other than the Copa del Rey, which is, what we want. We all want one thing as Real Madrid fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think reframing it like that, because even myself, I don't know if I put it in that perspective, but like when you reframe it like that, it is incredible what he's achieved this season, because he's had it's been a completely different season just from the obstacles he's had to overcome to produce those numbers. So I think that's huge for him. And again, I think a big part of the reason why he had freedom against Barcelona and had one of his best duels ever against Araujo was because Rodrigo was on the opposite wing, occupying defenders and providing a threat. And then you also obviously have Camavinga, who not only played lights out defensively 1v1 against Rafinha, but he has the ability to kind of come in obviously as an interior and play as a midfielder, underlap, combine out wide with Vinicius, and just add a layer to that game, which we don't really have when Mendy or Nacho, even Alaba to a degree, play in that position. And so I think those two, to your point earlier in this podcast, like if we're gonna say one thing that's improves this team, and you mentioned Rodrigo and Camavinga, I think them playing in those positions improves Vinicius and gives him the ability, gives him more freedom, and gives him more options to combine with in the final third, but also to connect with others.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's why that's the lineup I like the most. It's just the most smooth. Camavinga overlaps. Vinicius cuts in.
So you think Camavinga's at left back on Wednesday?
He could. I feel like it really matters less Wednesday. That's where it comes back to. It's like we go through. I mean, again, I don't want to jinx it as we talked about.
I think he's at left back.
You think he's at left back?
Yeah.
My question is, like, say we go through, is Camavinga at left back like against a Man City or a Bayern, and as we move forward, I think after the Clásico, I agree. I think he is. Who do you start in midfield then in the ideal
I think
lineup?
he's going to start. I think he's going to start the same lineup as he did against Barcelona. Um, and I
Love
think
it.
what's interesting is our system changes more to um it's almost like a back three. Um or like an unbalanced asymmetrical 3-4-3 because you have Camavinga who comes in as like an additional midfielder. Fede actually goes out a little bit more wide, and Rodrigo comes in a little bit more. And so it's kind of like an asymmetrical 3-4-3. You have Carvajal who just holds back. And I think when you have Camavinga and Fede able to kind of cover in behind Cruz and cover his blind spots, um, it helps you to be able to play him in that role. I'm not a huge proponent of him playing as a defensive midfielder, especially, I mean, from the various performances we've seen. I think back to City last year, but I think when you have the right personnel there and you build the right shape around him, he's not, it's just a different, you just have to provide different roles to different players. We always talk about like positions aren't fixed and they're just spots on a field and spaces on a field. And so I think when you can just give players the right roles and make the system kind of shape shift when you have the ball and when you don't, um, then I think it could work. It could work. It's obviously only been one big game sample size, but I think Carlo probably really liked it on Wednesday, and I have a feeling he's going to go with that again.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll go with it again. I'm just so curious to see if he has to evolve it in ahead of a hypothetical Champions League semifinals. I'm just more skeptical that it's the same lineup he uses all the time, but it does tick all the boxes. It has more cover for Cruz, and there's still Ceballos available off the bench if they need a little more thrust in place, and Chouameni. So, shoring up the game or bringing more energy, they can inject that into the midfield. That's where it is super promising. That might be the Gala 11. And I do agree that when you compare that to last year, you just wonder about it defensively, but it might just be way better offensively than last year. To the point where it's just, that's where I wonder, is it just better? Because you're not starting every game with a team that like labors its way for an hour and struggles to progress the ball, as we saw at points when they would play Cruz, Modric, Casemiro, and Valverde, and they wouldn't have enough energy, it felt like. And this lineup does seem to mitigate that. I mean, I thought Mendy was great last year, but I think Camavinga, I feel like he's a better two-way left back. Like, I mean, not just like, I think the offense and the comfort on the ball kind of adds to more defensive comfort, if that makes sense. Do you feel that way? As far as it's the same argument I made for Chouameni when he came in, and first half of the season we saw it at points where because he's more comfortable on the ball than Casemiro, and there are moments where even though he can't defend as well, he may it like that offensive attribute, the comfort it like conveys to the rest of the team is better. And I think the first Clasico, there were moments where the team really calmly passed through Barcelona's press. And what are your thoughts there? Do you think Camavinga, by making the team more comfortable, does he make it better than what Mendy could?
Yeah, so you're basically saying do his pros outweigh the cons there in that position?
Yeah, and it really comes down to like how good Vinicius is and how if you get the team clicking in a certain way, we're very unguardable. Um, that's the
Yeah.
premise.
Yeah, I mean the big thing for I've always argued that like it depends on the game state for Camavinga or even or in other words to say it depends on Carlo Ancelotti's game plan because if you're going to sit in and counter, then I don't think Camavinga's the guy because I think if you put him in a position where he's actually playing like as a proper left back and has to um, kind of know when to tuck in the back four, know when to press out, know when to, if there's a long diagonal ball, when to track the runner and how to track the ball. And like we saw, I think it was against Espanyol when he really struggled with that. And so in that type of game setting and that type of game plan, then no, I don't think he's the right guy. But if you're planning to press high up the field, you're planning to have a lot of the ball, you're planning to take the game to the opposition, or if you're chasing a game, then yeah, I think that's the type of game state where I want Kamavinga at left back, and I think the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, the other thing I just think about is Um, is there any loss or big cost to taking him out of midfield that is completely lost? Is
Yeah.
there dynamic that we just never get by not playing him there? Because
Yeah.
he was also big at Anfield.
Yeah.
Uh,
And in the return leg at the Santiago Bernabeu, it was
yeah,
incredible. That was probably his best performance of the season.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like it's too bad we don't have two of Camavingas.
Yeah. Well, tell me if you agree with this, because I mentioned this to Keon probably a couple months ago. And at the time, I don't know that he agreed with me, but I think now it's even grown even more. There's more credence to this statement. Do you think Camavinga's breakout season this season is equivalent to Vinicius's last year?
Yeah, I had been thinking about it the last few days. I was gonna say that like I can't think of another like for the price we paid, he's like the midfield Vinicius. Like, or I guess now left back and midfield, which is just crazy. But yeah, I do because I think there are just two types of attributes in football, like super creative attributes that allow you to score, and then super destructive attributes that allow you to move the ball up the field. And Camavinga, he's just like the other side of the ball. He can dominates it so much, and his ability to flow into transitions means he's a solid offensive player. I think he's such a perfect fit for the modern game. I think both of them, they're able to like win duels at such high speeds, and they consistently seek out duels at high speeds. I think that's something the modern game needs, technically gifted players who consistently win 1v1 situations. And
Hmm.
in that sense, yeah, I think they're both so good 1v1 that they just make the game easier for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best. I think it's cool to think about that we finally have for years I thought Neymar and Messi were the two 1v1 geniuses and they were at Barcelona. I love Bale and Ronaldo, and like I think Marcelo was great 1v1, but now we really have two of the best 1v1 players in the world.
Yeah, and it's a rare skill set too in the game. Like it's more and more, it's getting harder and harder to find these types of players. So, before we get, I know you have a time limit, and I want to get this talking point in here. So, we want to talk about some of the aftermath after the game. But before we get to that, is there anything else you want to touch on from this game? I know we kind of did more of a preview and high level kind of holistic view of the team and stuff, which is probably going to happen all season with these La Liga games. But anything else you want to touch on from this game before we move on to an incident afterwards?
No, I'd love to touch more on the game, but like man, just reading too much into La Liga games has never helped me predict what's going to happen with Real Madrid. And that's the main reason I personally zoomed out. It's like we could zoom in, but then 3 days later we're gonna be like talking about a completely different team. But yeah, I'm ready to talk about the incident after the game.
So yeah, so this has blown up after the game. I don't know if anything else has come out since we started recording, but Fede Valverde after the match waited in the parking lot for Alex Baena, who apparently said something to Fede back in January during the Copa del Rey tie regarding Fede's then or the child still unborn. But at the time he feared a miscarriage, and Alex Baena apparently said something about that miscarriage, saying like your son cry now because your son's not going to be born, something along those lines. Really, really awful. And then today, after the game, Fede waited for him in the parking lot and apparently, reportedly, punched him. I don't know if there was a scuffle after that. He told him never to talk about my family again or never mess with my family. And so, really, obviously shocking news. We'll see what comes out, what type of punishment if comes to Fede's way for attacking Baena. But um, from my perspective, I like, especially now being a father, like I totally empathize with Fede and like understand his rage and frustration, and like just I'm disgusted at Baena. Like I don't understand how you could even say something like that. That goes beyond any kind of sporting trash talk. Like that just crosses the line. But at the same time, Fede knows that he's a Real Madrid player. He knows that he has to be held to a higher standard. He knows that he's potentially a future captain. And you can't do that. Like, you just can't. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out after this. But kind of, what's your take after reading everything and seeing the
Yeah,
news?
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, the stuff that was said, it's weird. Normally, like, if someone punches someone, the person doing the punching is in trouble, but the stuff said was so egregious. And I think it shows in the sense that Villarreal are not actually charging Fede with anything. And I think that's almost like a statement from the club that, like, hey, like, this is kind of like a low blow from our own player. And police had to intervene to stop both of them, is what the official quote says. So we'll
Okay.
see what happens. Yeah, I think like 9 out of 10 times, situation like this, Fede gets in big trouble. This might be the one time where I don't actually think he gets in that much trouble. I think this ends up being forgotten, if I'm being honest. Like,
I mean, I just can't, like, what type of person do you have to be,
I
Baena, to
know.
say this thing? Like, how does that even cross your mind to say that during a game? Like, I just
I don't know. It's been a weird season. We've heard some
yeah,
strange things said about Vinicius this season.
yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's been a weird season in La Liga, especially the hostility with have we seen that this much hostility between Real Madrid and like random La Liga players and teams in a season in a while?
No, but I'll tell you what, I like the tension over the Clasico this past week. Like, I enjoyed that. It was nice to finally see that again. High
I like
stakes,
that.
high intensity scuffles.
I'd like that.
I enjoyed that.
I thought it was funny when Vinicius said like "Shut up, you suck" to Ferran.
Yeah.
That was so funny. Barcelona fans were laughing at that. That was really good. I agree. I mean I think strictly for PR purposes, like I think like the whole like some of the things that were said about Vinicius, like some I think one of the players said he wanted to like break Vinicius earlier this season. I think things like that, even even though there's racism involved with it, I think the tension still might draw more viewers. This is just like a dude being a prick. Like this is just
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like I don't even know. Like I feel like saying you want to break a player might still fall within certain bounds of some code, but like saying screw your kid being born is something else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. It crosses the line.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I don't know what to expect at this club anymore. It's just been a crazy.
yeah, you're right. I mean, this has been kind of a wild season in that regard. Like, just some of uh, the crap that our players and the club and the team have had to deal with, and just what's been going on in La Liga in Spain. It's been crazy, but
Yeah,
um, it's we'll see what bring the last few weeks bring us. But
that's one.
um, go
That's
ahead.
another reason the league feels a little different sometimes. Like, I don't think the refs are biased personally, but I do think like league games, the whole dynamic when we play is so different to a Champions League tie. The way it's officiated, the way the crowd is, it's like a different planet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the officiating, we could go on a whole nother podcast, but just the amount of red cards compared to other leagues, the amount of yellow cards, the amount of fouls called, the amount of stoppages in games, the VAR controversy. I mean, I've never been one to um like to talk about referees, and I've never been one, like, I always kind of made fun of the Spanish media for being so dramatic on refereeing calls and always focusing on that. But I've been proven wrong with the Nigera case and everything else that's been going on. So I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. But these are things that now that I'm just like, it's getting more and more visible and more frustrating.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's been the refereeing topic has also been a big one in the NBA, so that's why it's been a fun season of sports for sure. But yeah, I'm excited for Wednesday and quite confident too. So I'm excited for that.
Yep, I've got a quiet confidence as well. I don't want to. I don't like to be too arrogant on these things, but I think Real Madrid obviously is the better team and they should go through. So looking forward to Wednesday. Sid, I appreciate you hopping on and filling in, especially with Keon out. He did want me to mention that there will be a live Zoom podcast for Patreons after after the first leg against Chelsea. So everyone, make sure you're signed up on Patreon to get access to that. And they're a lot of fun. The chats are awesome. It's really euphoric feeling, especially after big wins like the one against Barcelona last week. So Definitely hop in and join if you haven't already. Otherwise, Sid, again, appreciate it, and we'll talk again next time.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.